Here we go.
And
Hi everyone, it's Doriskin with Leveling Up, and this week I have the pleasure of having a really prestigious panel to talk about reigning and preparing to reign. We have Duke Dog from the middle, he's reigned 7 times. Duchess Inga from Abacal, who has reigned as the Princess of Abacal, the Queen of Antir, and the Queen of Abacal. Duchess Dalla from Antir, who has reigned in Antir. Duchess Antigone from Astioria. Duchess Caoilfhoinn from the east is supposed to be with us. We'll see if she joins in a little late. Countess Aryana from Antir, who has reigned as Queen of Antir and the Princess of Awertha multiple times. And Viscountess Syele from the west, who has reigned in the mists. So the Genesis, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and join and talk about reigning and preparing to reign and motivations to reign. I think it's going to be very, very interesting for a lot of people. Yeah, okay, so Duchess Caoilfhoinn is going to join us and she'll be here in a minute. So where I wanted to start with this is there's like this myth that it's not okay to say you want to reign, especially if you're not a fighter. So I was wondering if one of you would sort of take that on and then we can sort of cycle through you. Does anyone want to go first?
why not?
Okay.
I can. Okay. Many long years ago, even before I was a princess, I don't think I was even Baroness yet, etc. I had a lovely interaction with the Queen of the West. And she was the one that gave me some words to live by, if you will, is that ambition is not a 4-letter word. It's a matter of, it's the first step in the journey. There has to be something that you want, something deep in your heart to even make the effort to prepare for. And entering a tourney or competition of any sort is preparing for that. You have to do something. There are many reasons to enter a competition of skill. Being seen, being noticed, and admired maybe. The opportunity to pit yourself against a noble opponent or dread arch rival, we had a few of those. Or in the case of a tournament, perhaps availing yourself of the opportunity to hit someone, anyone for heaven's sake. It's not wrong. You have to do it. I have never understood why people feel that they have to be, oh no, I'm just going to go to tourney, etc. No, come on, you're going to crown tourney. And the other words that we live by in this household is never enter a tourney you're not prepared to win. Never. Because everybody can have a wonderful day. It could be that everything falls the way and a very unusual selection is made, if you will, in that they have earned their way to the top and no one would have expected it, including themselves. It's called No, Don't Go There. And by the way, that's Sagan of Ostensay that is the one that said that never ever go into a tournament unless you are prepared to win. So it's been something that in my life forever and ever, amen, because there were always logistics. There's always things that you want to be prepared for so that you have the confidence to go in there and do the job right. But unfortunately, there's so many people that don't think beyond the tourney. They just think, oh, I'm going to go win crown. And then it's like this bait and switch about, by the way, you now have meetings, there's a lot of stuff to go on that they're not prepared for. So that's it. You have to have the ambition. You have to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to do it, to even think about entering that tournament, having your cards right, having everything ready to go, having both of you with your paperwork in order, no matter which kingdom you go to. Okay, I started.
Thank you. Syele, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that your question is really important, especially to those who are on the consorting side of the field, because I have had several friends who felt very heartbroken by people expressing displeasure at them saying, you know, I want to be like God. I would love to be a princess one day. I would love to be a queen. Um, and and people react it's very interesting because the fighter is kind of expected to want to win that tournament, right? The fighter is he's supposed to, or she or they are supposed to want to go out there and just rip everybody to shreds in a very honorable fashion, of course, and get through and like win that day, and that's totally normal. Whereas for the traditionally, like the consort side, it's seen as somehow gauche, I think, when I'm trying very hard, and please bear with me. I'm trying to be very conscious with my pronouns. If I miss up, please forgive me, friends, because I do mean this for everyone. But especially, I think for females, it has been a challenge when someone says, I want to be a queen one day. Like, I want to be queen. That would be so fun, right? I want to do this for the kingdom, or I want to further that initiative. I want to see more of this. And people can have like a whole slate of things they want to do, and people just go, God, did you just say that you want to be queen? Like, that's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll just wait and see who she gets with to get there. Like, it's some sort of bad thing, and I don't think that it should be. And I wish that the things I was saying right now weren't things that were said to me by consorts in various different kingdoms. I think that there is sort of a stigma there that we have some work to do to undo.
Rifkin, you're muted.
Sorry, I did that because my dog was barking. I think sometimes women are very mean to each other, and there's this whole thing about chasing the belt or wanting something, and there are so many things you can do with reigning, and I know Inga had something to share, so I really appreciate that, Syele.
Well, I think probably my intention connects with what I'm thinking Rifkin's sort of leaning towards as well, is you know, there's that perception somehow that we're not supposed to want to strive for these things. So there definitely is some gendering to that. One of the things that I definitely, and I have sort of unusual experience, I received my AOA in the August, and in November I was crown prince, or rather a princess of the Principality of Avacal. So I went from being very, very, very new to now reigning. When I was first stepped up as princess, it was the third court I'd ever attended.
Mm.
Really sort of right into the deep end. And so I had never received this sort of negative messaging because I wasn't on anyone's radar. But what I realized very quickly in trying to be a support to other people who are aspiring is how much there is this really negative message that you're not allowed to want for it. And I have a theory about why that happens. And I think in some ways this is actually on the shoulders of those who reign, is that I think very often we make it look so effortless, it looks so seamless, that people don't actually realize how much work it is. And so what I've seen is a lot of people say, well, you just want it because you get to sit up in court and get gifts, and they have, generally speaking, I hear people say these things without an appreciation of how much work it actually is. And anyone who's done this can say that regardless of what level you rule at or what size of kingdom you rule, it is an astounding, like an absolutely astounding amount of work. And cost aside, and I know that there's many of these topics Rifkin wants to get to later, but it is actually a ton of work. And so I think it is easy to look at that, and if you only see the shiny part, the court part, to see it as something where I want to be fancy and I don't want to earn it. And I think that is the negative, that's where I think that negative perception comes from. And I think part of the thing that we can do is exactly what Rifkin's doing today, where we're going to talk about what's actually behind it and about how large of a commitment it is and how much it actually takes from anyone who's actually done the job. And so, you know, I don't like to call it a job per se, but like the duties that are associated with it, it's no small undertaking. So I think that's where that comes from. And I think that's why part of this is so very good. But I can definitely agree with what Syele said, is that is a really common comment, is as soon as anyone says, I would love to be queen, people are very negative about it. And I think that we need to change that dialogue.
Great. Duchess Caoilfhoinn, am I pronouncing that right?
You got it.
Excellent. All right, you're up.
So about wanting it, there's actually a couple of things that were touched on earlier that I just wanted to mention was go in prepared. I am, we are probably a good cautionary tale on that. Our first reign, Brennan wasn't supposed to win. He was supposed to get knighted that morning, and that was it. We were going to go home, and everything was going to go back to normal. So we had no expectation that we were going to win that day, and so we weren't prepared. We were not in it. We were in no way prepared. We didn't have a staff. We didn't have people. We didn't have. I mean, we had ideas. We had conversations, but like none of the conversations that we had in the wouldn't it be weird? Wouldn't it be nice? None of those fantasies were really what ended up happening once you were there. And I think I've described it as there are two curtains. Like you can work a million reigns, and you've seen behind the curtain, and then you win a crown, and you're like, oh, there's a whole other curtain behind that curtain that I didn't know was there, and it's a whole different thing. So you know, and I think when people say don't want it, or people say do want it, or people say it's okay to have ambition, which it is. I think sometimes the negative that comes back at you is more from a place of be sure you know what you're asking for before you say this is what you are striving for, because it is a lot of work, and it is, you know, it's assembling staffs, and it's it's weird dynamics that happen between you and people you've known forever. I think we kind of joke, but it's not really a joke, that every reign you lose a friend. And you know, being prepared for the negative in addition to the positive is almost more important. Emotionally, it can be extraordinarily hard to see your friends say things like, well, you just wanted a nice garb, you know, like, look at all of the stuff you're getting. How can you possibly be complaining that it's hard? You're getting things. And I'm like, that's not how life works. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Dalla, are you ready?
Yes, just to add to that, presence of a positive is not absence of a negative, which is what I think you're saying. I was doing some thinking about this topic beforehand, and it occurred to me that reigning is kind of like being a politician. You need a certain skill set to get the job, and you need a different skill set to do well at the job. So we practice, and we go to practice, and we talk to people, and we're involved in the community and all of that, and that's a great way to try and prepare for the job. And then when you actually get the job, there's a lot more leadership, and there's a lot more connection of individuals, at least that I've found. I also wanted to say that I've heard people say that they want to reign, and I've heard it as a negative, and I've heard it as a positive. So I'm racking my brain like, oh, give me an example. I don't know if I can give you an exact example, but I think we've all heard it where someone has said, oh, I'm going to be queen someday, or I'm going to be princess, and it's just totally turned you off. But we've also heard that other version that it goes, one day, wouldn't it be nice? And suddenly you connect with them and you go, oh, I want to help you. It's all in the person's attitude. Is it your right to become a queen, or is it something cool that one day might happen? And I just think the person who is striving, whether it's male, female, consort, fighter, what have you, I think it's all in your attitude.
Yeah, I think it's about whether there's entitlement or not, right? Yeah. So your Grace, Dog, would you like to add?
Yes. And all of that is exactly on point. But there's a couple of other things that I want to mention that I think this having it be an ambition as a bad thing is an outgrowth of the I want to be a peer sort of thing that people point at and say, well, you shouldn't want it that badly that you'll do anything to get it. Well, there's only one thing you can do to become the crown, and that's somebody's got to win a tournament, and you have to practice, and you have to prepare, and you have to get ready to do that. I think it's an excellent point that one set of skills to get the job and another set of skills to do the job well. You have to be ready to at least hire on those skills if you win. If you are somebody who hates going to meetings and hates spending time outside of the SCA on the SCA, you have got the wrong job. Now, I think that it is a job, but I think we can overemphasize how difficult the job is if you've got decent staff. It can be a very fun job. I think the job is less about my personal feeling is, and why I like being the crown is I feel the job is less about administration and more about putting on a show. To me, that is the job that only the crown can do. So that is where I think people should put their energy. And if you're not good at that, if you're not comfortable with standing up and speaking in front of crowds, you've also got the wrong job. So wanting to be king and queen is a great thing if you want to be there to do the incredible service that being the crown is. And that's why I like doing it myself, and why I keep going back to the trough, so to speak, is that it's the best service I can do, because a conceit of mine is that I have a certain flair for the theater of the SCA. I'm a terrible, awful, procrastinating administrator. So I keep myself away from kingdom offices for the good of the realm. And they can stand me for 6 months while I sit the throne and put on some really nice staged things and then disappear into the background again where I won't hurt anything. So the ambition to be king or queen, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do it, but as several of you have said, know what it is you want to do. Being prepared, I think, can be taken a little too far. We had one set of successors one reign. The princess showed up for her very first curia meeting with a 2-inch thick binder with tabs on the side and of all the things they wanted to accomplish. And, you know, this was probably my 4th reign by that time. And my queen and I looked at each other and were like, well, because we knew and have learned, and I had 4 reigns before my current queen. So I guess it must have been the 5th reign. So, but anyway, I have told people that if you want to reign, be prepared to do the job. And if your ambition is to right some incredible wrong or do some thing that you've seen needed to be done for decades and nobody's had the courage to do it or whatever, you are going to be disappointed, burned out, or despised, or some combination of all 3. You need to take the job as it comes to you. If things are done a certain way, there's probably a reason. That reason may change or may not be valid anymore, but you've got to look at why things are done in a certain way. Just going in to shake things up is a terrible reason to be the crown. So while ambition is okay, the correct ambition is important.
So let's talk about that, about motivations for reigning and for entering and winning crown. In some kingdoms, it's expected that you'll enter crown. I come from such a kingdom. I know in some other kingdoms that you don't enter unless you want to win. So does anyone want to start there? I know we sort of touched on, how feeling entitled sort of puts people off of, and that's sort of a bad motivation, I guess, if we're going to label motivations. But does somebody want to talk about some good motivations to reign? Okay, Inga?
I'll dive in if no one will. Actually, I was thinking as Doug was talking is that, that's a great point about what do you want to do. And I've seen reigns like you described with the binder, and they have a great agenda. And I think it's not a bad thing to have an idea of things that you would like to have an opportunity to do if it presented itself. But I think it's important to remember that at its core, your job is to see that the kingdom runs and provide that theater and inspire and lead. And there's so many things that you have to do. It's really tricky to fit much in beyond that, right? And so I've seen people be very disappointed with their reigns because they had so much that they had in mind to do. And I think it's important to not lose sight of what are you actually there to do. And just doing that job, taking care of the administrative that some people love. I love it personally, but I come from that kind of background. And where I also love the theater, though. I love creating that moment where you carry people away from the modernness to that where they feel transformed. And so I love bringing that theater, and I love fighting on the war field. So I love those moments of just raw intensity that you can have when you're leading on the field. So I think there's lots of wonderful things that you get to experience that are why it's incredibly, just an incredibly cool job to do, to be honest. But recognize that if you go in with, I would say, big of an agenda, it can actually hamper your ability to enjoy it. And so I think it's easy to lose sight of what are you actually there to do.
Thank you. Duchess Dalla, do you want to add something?
Sure. So I'm going to counter that what both of you said just a little. Each of our reigns, so my husband was my fighter, and we did a principality reign and then 2 kingdom reigns. We live in a principality within a kingdom, just for context. And each time we reigned, we went in with either a goal or a theme. So one thing that we had learned, and just to clarify again, he reigned prior to me with his first wife. So he reigned 4 times. Each time we reigned, we had an idea what we wanted to accomplish, and totally with the understanding that it may not get done. But what we learned is that whatever your goal is, you need to start at day 1. And whatever it is, you probably want to talk to your king and queen or your prince princess first. So you want to get them on board or get their okay, depending on what it is. But if you start, whatever your idea is, if you start the day you step up, you've lost a good chunk, maybe even a third of your potential time. So if you have a concept that you're trying to help your kingdom principality progress in some way, and maybe you're in the know, maybe this is something that it needs to be done, but no one's picked up, whatever the thing is, start at day 1. Start it the next day after you win. Maybe not that day. But one of our reigns, our theme, we didn't have a goal that reign, but our theme was communication and transparency, and trying to make sure that things that people knew that were on our retinue, people knew what was going on. So that's just an example. So I know another person had a goal to particularly modify or change like a ceremonial or a law, which takes a lot of work, and hats off to them. But whatever you do, you need to start right away.
So I know Aryana wants to add something. Can one of you sort of, not right now, but sort of expand on what some themes or goals would be? Go ahead, Aryana.
Okay. Brendan and I served as prince and princess 4 times for Huerta. 4 reigns in a new principality. That's a lot of working and reworking of everything from new ideas, badges, awards, formats, but one thing that never changed is that you win on Saturday, you step up on Sunday, same weekend. And so being prepared, yes, from day 1, you had to be prepared if there was something you wanted to do. We had general themes in that there was reworking the ceremonial, there was possibly reworking the rotation between groups. And those are big things about how we were going to actually function there. When we stepped up as king and queen, didn't have a lot. I mean, we were still considered newcomers and outsiders and everything else, but I got to dabble in the youth combat arena and and I also became a patron of the rapier group, because I just saw that these were two groups that needed to be brought up forward, and that they needed to be looked at, and they needed to be up front. And so that was what I did. Brendan had his own pieces that were but people really didn't know what to do with the fact that they had a knight, a laurel, and two pelicans on the throne. It was a matter, we've been there, we saw that, we did that. And when we visited, I think in Avical, when we went up and visited up there, and we ended up speaking barony, principality, and kingdom, all in the same event, because we could speak all three of those languages. It was something that you draw from, and you have to be flexible. You have to be seriously flexible. I did not really know exactly what I was going to do with the youth combat, but I knew something had to be fixed. So I actually gave the darling Callista the job. I said, here, this is what I want. And off goes Callista, and she comes back and she says, did you know it was this bad? And I said, honey, I have children. They were in it. Yes, I knew it was that bad. And she was able to do many things. Again, and this is where I thoroughly agree, you need good staff. And so it's always keeping an eye out there, because that allows you to possibly get some of your things done that you cannot do yourself. There's only so many hours of the day that you can be serving the kingdom, serving the locals, and serving your seneschal, and signing the paperwork and everything else, even as you're trying to stop, not be frozen out in your May crown. That's so going in with an idea, small, big, it doesn't matter, but also being fully aware that there is not, that you can have all the agenda you want. There are going to be things in your way that it may be more work than even 6 months can give you, or even 9 months can give you, if as crown prince and princess. And that was always the interesting part, is reminding people, even if it was only overnight, they were not prince and princess yet, or they were not the king and queen yet. So they're still limited on what you do, what you can do. However, Brendan and I, especially Brendan, got lots of assignments as crown prince to get some extra work done that was not being done. So it's knowing the best preparation in going in is knowing what you can and cannot do. What is immediate? What are the processes? What's in your way, or what's there to help you? And that takes a lot of reading, a lot of noticing, and maybe going to court once in a while to see what's going on. I'm done.
Okay, Duchess Caoilfhoinn, would you like to add something?
Yes, going back to the question you had asked earlier of good motivations. This is going to sound hokey, and it's true, so I'm unapologetic about it. The best motivation, again, first time was a complete surprise. You know why we did it a second and third time? This is my favorite kind of service. It is an opportunity to recognize people and groups and really and give people jobs and put people up front and really help promote the things and the people that are important or that need it. And I mean, we talked about the theater and the theater of court, and there is nothing that gives me more joy than being able to give people their moment, whatever that moment is, whether it's a tiny moment of finding a child who's like just doing this, oh my God, it's the queen, and like giving them a token or a favor, or finding someone who somebody has come to you and said, hey, did you know that this person's been working in the kitchen at every single event in our barony for 20 years and has never gotten their AOA? And you're like, oh, well, we're going to fix that. It's being able to be that voice and being able to do those things. The best motivation, in my opinion, is when it's for others, not for you. And that's why we did 2 and 3, reigns 2 and 3.
It's the giving, not the getting.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk about some considerations that you need to think about if you're serious about reigning or winning crown, and what things you can do to prepare for those considerations. Do you want to start, Antigone? Is your internet okay? Or is she frozen?
I think we lost her.
Okay.
Come back, Antigone.
Somebody else want to start?
I can add something
Okay.
here. There are practical concerns like what kind of car are you driving? Do you have really, really good friends that you're not going to lose over this? Did they have a good car? Or a car that can haul all of your stuff. Midrealm has its own little trailer that, but you got to have a car that can pull it. Years and years ago, I donated a car top carrier, a hard shell car top carrier to the kingdom because I watched one of our kings driving around in a K car to reigns to events and trying to fit all the stuff in it. It was heartbreaking. Having a staff, I think, depending on, I've done this enough times that I can get the weekly work schedule down to about 15, 20 hours a week between events. That's the amount of time my lady and I had to sit down and do kingdom stuff, whether it was award recommendations, correspondence with kingdom officers, that sort of thing. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount of work, but there's a routine that you can develop that allows you to do some things. I found staff more useful at events than between events. Unless there's this project that you've got that you want to put somebody in charge of and give them some credit and some opportunity, that's a different thing. Immediate staff, I think, is something you can overdo. You'll get tired of these people after a few months, no matter how good friends they are. When you see them once a week and feel like you have to get business done and they just want to hang out and be friends, you don't have time for that this evening. I'm sorry. And that can strain a relationship. So it's a balance, and there's, like in everything, you've got to strike the right balance. So.
Thank you. Syele, do you want to go next?
Yeah, kind of real quick, just tying on to one of the things His Grace just said, because it's something that's really important to me, that I noted kind of to this group when we were getting prepared. Don't automatically assume all of your friends have the bandwidth to do exactly the things that you want, and prioritize your friendship and your love for these people above the stuff you need as prince and princess or king and queen, because especially with the pandemic situation, I think that a lot of us have learned a lot about personal boundaries and ways to consider our own mental health and well-being. And so many people have had so much stuff put on them, like I can't even imagine. I feel like I've had it relatively easy, but even like during our reign, I had the fortune or misfortune, I guess. I was actually not working at the time. It was during kind of the economic downturn. We were reigned in like 2009, 2010, I think. And I was in a spot where most of what I was looking at for employment was not great, right? So I ended up spending a lot of more time on the reign, like not necessarily than Warwick did, but handling all of that, the email and the recommendations and sort of the administrative side of things, because I had the time and the bandwidth too. And I have to tell you, it was a lot, right? And this was a principality reign. It was not a kingdom reign. So we were not, and we are not in a kingdom where we would normally be asked to give any input or sit on like the principal or the peerage councils. Like I know in Ontir, because of the size of the kingdom, the prince and princesses are often asked for input, etc., based on kind of what's going on. So even without that workload, it was a lot. So definitely consider what you're taking on when you're thinking about it. Definitely consider the amount of space you require for stuff. Thank you, Dag. There is so much stuff that shows up on your doorstep. You're like, oh my God, this thing just happened. It was so amazing. I get to be the princess, or I get to be the queen. It's gonna be so. What? All that has to fit in my Jeep? It's not a very big Jeep. Where did all this come from? Like,
Yeah, and your house.
exactly. It's not a very big house. Where's it going to go? So, but going back to having the staff, right? You do want to feel out your friends for sure. Just prioritize those personal relationships before you expect. Tons of us, our first instinct is to just give and give and give. Make sure you're asking for the things that you really need, though. Because you don't want to burn those people out, and especially you don't want to ruin those friendships.
So Antigone, it looks like your internet is up and you're not frozen. You want to add something in?
I actually have no idea what the discussion is right now because I've missed probably about the past 20 minutes. I've just been sitting here smiling.
Okay, so we're talking about considerations and preparing to reign, like some things that you would consider and how you prepare for those considerations. And we also had a question in the chat about which positions, like court positions, that you would want to make sure that you had fulfilled or like had somebody on deck beforehand, if you want to touch on that as well.
Yeah, so I think the best thing you can do is to be prepared as best as you can. And that's not necessarily having a binder like your example was, but having a theme, having an idea of kind of at least one or two goals overarching that you want to do that can get done in a reign. I think we require here that you serve in an office for a year before you can enter crown typically. Sometimes that gets waived. But because of that, a lot of people here think that once you've entered crown, you know how to do the job perfectly because you've magically learned doing an office at a barony or shire level. And that's actually not the case. What helped me the most was actually serving as entourage for several of our crowns ahead of time. And my husband serving as King's Champion, and literally us just going. And they were the people that we entourage and did things for were so kind. They basically gave us the rundown and kind of pulled that curtain away so that we could see, here's all the stuff that actually you have to do. And because we also don't have curia, the king's word is law. So here you have to be very knowledgeable about your corpora, your awards, everything else, on top of not just doing the public announcing and public speaking, which I actually had a terrible fear for and would vomit before court because I was so just nervous and had so much anxiety about it. I actually don't have any more anxiety about speaking in front of several hundred people anymore. But at the beginning, it was very rough. In our kingdom, there was the stigma that you're not supposed to say you want to win, even if you're a fighter. And especially if you're a consort, heaven forbid you say, oh, I'd like to be queen. That's just, how dare you? And unfortunately, what that breeds is a lack of education and a lack of preparedness. So people didn't know what it took to be crowned. They didn't understand all the work that went into it. They didn't understand all the meetings, all of the hours. I spent, 30 to 40 hours a week on top of my normal job that I did doing SCA stuff because my husband, he's a great fighter, but his administration and organizing is just not good. He's just not there with that. So that ended up being on my plate the whole time. So I think if we could get rid of that stigma of it's not okay to want to, and instead change it to like, hey, if you want to, if you truly want to, then that's a good thing. And let's teach you about how to do the job in this kingdom. Because each kingdom, each principality is all going to be different. So my experience is going to be completely different than all of yours and vice versa. I think if we can change the narrative to that and make it more open and be more open to conversations about, what your experience really was like, not sugarcoating it. Because for me, a lot of people tried to sugarcoat it. And so when I ended up having to do, some extra things, I was like, I don't understand what is this? How does this work? And I asked for help and no one would help us or give us advice. So You know, I was just supposed to magically know, I guess. And so I really feel like that's the strongest thing you can do for yourself, is to educate yourself, you know, make those connections with the royal family in your kingdom, maybe outside of your kingdom a little too, and, you know, just pick their brains and ask for their honest opinion. And hopefully that helps you when you step up. The rest of the preparedness is, you know, I love spreadsheets. I've everything's in a spreadsheet. I figure out, yeah, right.
All of us are like,
I know, spreadsheets. And so my husband calls me the spreadsheet person, you know, because I'll sit there and if we have friends who say they want to reign, or somebody comes to say they want to reign, I'm like, okay, well, here's the calendar. Here's all the events you have to go to. How much money do you want to spend? How much money can you spend? Here's how much you get from the kingdom. Do you know the Kapora and all these sub documents you need to know, not just the Kapora? Do you know SCA documenting government? Do you know how the board works? Do you know all the things you need to know administratively to do this job, which is important in our kingdom. In other kingdoms, it's less important. That I think they have curia and a couple other things where officers take more of that job on, and you're able to focus on being the face of the kingdom. So in the end, it's kind of, you're going to be able to do with being crowned whatever you decide to make of it. Just make sure that you are putting forth that perception and what you really want to do with it. Don't let anybody else take that away from you.
I want to give Antigone a hug from here, because you said nobody helped you the first time.
Now let me be honest. There are a lot of people that helped us, but there were times when I needed help and I could not get it. Be it nobody knew, or just nobody had the time to help us. And I think a lot of people look at, I'm very prepared, I'm very organized. So a lot of people think I just have things and I'm good and I don't need help. And so the reality of it is, I probably should have asked people more for help than just assuming people would just stand up and help me. So there is that as well. We did have a lot of help. It was just, there were times when I had none, and it was very difficult. So you just have to be able to work through that.
Rifkin,
Did I
you're
answer the question?
Rifkin, you're muted.
Sorry, the dog again. Go ahead, Your Grace, Duke Dog.
okay. I'm really gratified to be here, and it is indicative to me that I'm surrounded by all you ladies in this, and the idea of trying to teach people and prepare people ahead of time has occurred to me in the past, and I've actually tried to do classes at events with just I'm here. I can say without conceit that I've done this more times than anybody in my kingdom. Come and we will talk. If you want to know what it's like and you want to know what it is you need to know beforehand, come sit with me. I'm having office hours for an hour over here. And the only people that showed up were non-fighters, were ladies who are interested in what needs to actually be done. So it's hard to educate. You know, in a volunteer organization, people have to volunteer to get knowledge. And yeah, I wish we could push that knowledge out a little further. And also, Antigone, I'm very sorry that you didn't have the kind of help you wanted when you needed it. But anyway, that was it. I just wanted to put that in there.
Great. So I know.
Sorry to jump in. I just wanted to say very quickly to the point of having office hours and people not showing up. That all goes back to that whole stigma around wanting it. You can't show up for that class because that means I want it, right?
Yeah, but see the guys, it's okay for the guys to want it apparently, and none of them showed up. Yeah. Only the women showed up who it's not supposed to be okay. I mean, they were the ones who I thought were going to take the job seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right. So it is okay. We're saying it's okay.
Totally okay.
You guys should all go to these things. I know that Inga and then Dalla want to talk. My sister Shaxi put out a really good question that maybe one of you guys can touch on. She says, what do you think about the concept of royal peers taking students so that people can be taught the ins and outs of reigning. It is such an important piece of training that so many people lack. So Inga, then Dalla.
So interestingly enough, my comment kind of connects to what Ashoksi says, is about where do you get that learning from? As a peer, and I'm was the first Duchess of my kingdom, and was one of the only, for a while I was the only Countess in Avacal, because no one else from Avacal had reigned at all, and was active playing. So I ended up being sort of the, well, if you don't know, ask Inga, and which is awesome, but it's also it can be a lot. But what I took on was that idea of exactly what Donna's Ashoksi has described, which is being a resource to people who aspire. And one of the things that I'm really proud that Avacal does is we both have a really good heirs handbook that we give to people the day they win, with everybody's thoughts on these things. So all of the sort of the peek behind the curtain for day one. But we also have a consort's tea, or the Queen's tea, where the consorts and their fighters are supposed to attend and ask questions. And we have a lovely little handbook that we give everyone that they're supposed to read. Obviously, we can't make people read things, but for some reigns, they've made that mandatory. If you're going to enter the list, you have to attend the tea. And that has been really interesting, because I think we have seen fewer people not asking, being, I would say they're less reluctant to ask the questions because we're being so transparent with the answers. Does that make sense? And so I've been really, I've been very proud of the fact that Avacal has taken that up. And I can't say that that's was our idea. We actually stole it from the Principality of the Summits. They used to do that for their Principality tournament. So I don't want to claim that we came up with it. We were clever enough to steal well. But the other thing I wanted to comment on is exactly about source of information, because what I have seen through the years as being someone that people ask questions of is that I see people who maybe have reigned a long time ago, or people who are friends with people who have reigned, or people who know people who have reigned in other kingdoms. And so when they come to that role of they're about to step into actually reigning, they think they know. And I cannot stress enough that even if you reigned in the exact same kingdom, in the exact same role, so not a princess, but rather a queen, but it's been several years, that still means you don't really know. So when you go to enter that list, you have to ask those questions in that current moment, because laws change and the SEA changes, and that's all good. And culture changes, and who does what changes. I ruled my very first time in 2001. My most recent reign was 2016. The difference between those two experiences was profoundly different because the SEA has changed. And so when we say to people, inform yourself, ask good questions, ask people to help you understand what's going on, make sure you're also asking people who have current information, because I've seen people who said, well, I asked my knight and his lady, or I asked people I knew who had reigned, but they didn't actually ask how current their information actually was, how recent is the information they're coming from. And I think that's a really critical thing, is that if you are to rule just based on that, like I said, I've seen people who ruled a very long time ago then step into the role and think that they had it, and then be really caught flat-footed by it. And I think it's important to recognize that just like our modern lives, the SDA world changes rapidly as well. And so you need to ask not only just for information, but good information. Be critical in your assessment of, where am I gathering these things? How am I informing myself, so that you really are well prepared, because you could prepare for the wrong job. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, that's super important. Duchess Dalla?
I agree with all of that. I have my little notepad, so as people are talking, I'm like, oh, I wanted to say something to that. The first thing is the royal peers. It's interesting because I'm a royal peer and I have 2 students, but I'm also a student to a pelican, which is a totally different relationship because they're totally different goals and situations. And so I'm having to navigate that with myself and within the local community. How is this different? Some people don't see it as different, but it is, and it can be. The next thing is I agree, the handbook was so wonderful. It's when I started in the SCA many years ago, as we all did, it's one of those things I really, really, really look forward to. And I got there and the world had just gone digital. Well, not the world, the SCA had kind of just gone digital, and I missed out. And it was one of those break your heart moments, but I got past it. The last thing, it's actually a different side to something His Grace Dag and Inga, her Grace, sorry, were talking about. The question about, do you talk to people or do you plan individuals before you reign? So my husband and I had a strict policy that we did not talk to anyone, and if someone talked to us about joining our retinue prior to winning, we just kind of shut it down. There's two reasons for that. One, we don't want to do a hurt feeling situation. Oh, well, you said I could do this, and maybe we forgot, maybe the character dynamics didn't work out and we couldn't go that way. It's just something we wanted to avoid. But the main reason was everyone had to be under the head of retinue. And even if we had an idea who the head of retinue was going to be, no, not going to be, who we would ask, because it's not a guarantee. Whoever was underneath them had to work with them. So if I asked Bob to be court coordinator and Bob didn't get along with Greg, well, now I have a problem. So we always had kind of people in our mind who would be good head of retinues, but we didn't ask them and we didn't assign or ask until we had our head of retinue. And that person really was the most important person. And in one of our reigns, we had two. It was a husband and wife. They were the head and they got to make those decisions. Oh, I don't want to work with that person. Oh, I do really want to work with that person. Cool. So we kind of took a different route with planning individuals.
Great, thank you. Aryana?
Now I have to, see, I should have been keeping notes. I told, same type of thing. Old timer here, 1987 was the first time that I was a princess. And 1998 was when Brendan and I were king and queen. All the students that I have taken that have wanted to know about royalty and etc., I have shared, I have made it into a class, I have done all of that. And try as I might, I try to make sure that it has current information wherever possible. After all, I have access to some wonderful people that can tell me what's going on right now. It all changes. Even the document that is my class, that I get asked a lot to teach it, it's because the interest is there. It's very free flowing. The information in the handout, whether we cover it or not, you have it in the handout. But it tells you, go to corpora, go to current kingdom law, go to current, it's called stay current in what's going on. And I mean, I still subscribe to the BOD. It's just so that I can know what is going on out there. The point of all that is that I did have someone approach me because they wanted to learn how to do retinue. I've never done retinue. I don't know retinue. And so I would make the recommendations to people that have been serving on retinue and know what the current retinue styling and job descriptions really are. So that's what I do as both a Pelican and a royal peer of, okay, you want to learn that service? Wonderful. You here, go talk to these people, because I can't teach them that. Now, the class is really fascinating. When you were talking about the people that don't show up, I've invited both the fighters and their consorts, and always that's the open invitation. I'm non-gender specific. I don't care. Come and listen. And I had a fighter drag his lady with him, sit her down there, gave her something to sew on or whatever. She asked the most questions, and I was going, yay. I also had a lovely countess out of, it's one of the other A kingdoms, but she, Anstiora down south, one of them, she was visiting at Sport of Kings. And one of the other A kingdoms. And she had come in for Sport of Kings. And she told me how bad it was that because she had a new dress, she was getting negative feedback. And it set the tone for the entire reign. This is, speaking to the other stuff. It's on us to tell them it's all right to have a pretty new gown. because you're going to coronation or because you're going to crown, because maybe you want something, because gosh, win or lose, you always have you'll have something nice to wear to court. So there's those little things that have to be addressed. And those are those little things that can make the bigger difference in the long run. Every one of the squires that had passed through this house, we've trained them to the best of our ability how to be king as they strive to be knight, because we want them prepared for the fact that there is service involved and service available, and if nothing else, how to behave in court.
Thank you. I know Syele wants to talk, but I just want to add something really quick. I think it's super important as part of the SCA's move toward more diversity, equity, and inclusivity that fighters, whatever gender, take on more of a role of preparing in ways other than fighting to reign. It's unfair to put that on the consort and to expect the consort to do all the administrative stuff. Let's step up and distribute that emotional workload or all of the workload. I know not everybody's like that, Your Grace, but you know, I just what you're hearing in some of this, it's just so important. So I would love to see the fighters take more of a vested interest in not just winning the tournament, but in reigning. So Syele, go.
I'm going. The question I think that your fabulous sister asked us was, should royal peers take students? I personally have not. I think that it is, as a Viscountess as opposed to a Lady of the Rose, I think that there is a delineation between the two that has primarily made, I think, by a lot of sort of the bulk of the order. But one thing I can tell you about that was really amazing and helpful to me as a newcomer to the SCA is I started playing in Atenvelt, and I am a member of the Order of the Sisterhood of the Panteri. That is not an official SCA order. It is a group of women who are there to raise each other up, and many of them were started or the group was actually started because someone told a royal peer of ours, a duchess, that she was not entitled to take students because that was not a bestowed peerage. And it worked out really well for that person. There are now almost 30 of us within our order, and we are primarily devoted not only to hopefully once we get back to a bit more normal, helping in our kingdoms in the ways that we can do. Kind of we basically are looking to help each of our members in the sisterhood understand sort of how they can best contribute, because not everybody loves throwing a feast, not everybody loves being the seneschal, not everybody loves throwing an event, but there's so many different opportunities for us to serve our kingdoms. But this order was started specifically because someone said, no, it's not your role to educate people who are interested in your peerage. And I think that that's a very sad thing, personally. I think that the royal peerages have so much to give and so much knowledge. I love the idea when generally when we have a new crown princess in the West, one who has not reigned previously, she is given the opportunity to have a princess's tea, which was mentioned earlier, you know, with the Queen and the Ladies of the Rose. We have done that before in the Principality of the Mists, where I reigned as well. I think that the Ladies of the Rose, or Valorous Estate, as they call it in Antir, for those Viscountesses, I think that that is such an invaluable, there's just so much knowledge there and so much experience. And I think that as a consort, and I absolutely agree with you, Surivkin, that fighters should take on some of that administrative burden as well. I think that if I was lost in a situation like Antigone mentioned, one of the first places I hope that I would be welcome to go would be the Ladies of Valorous Estate or the Ladies of the Rose of my kingdom or principality, in the hope that they could help me understand sort of how best to accomplish what I needed to do. Will I take on students who are interested? I don't know about that. I'm going to see how things get back to normal, but I'm certainly not against the idea.
Great. I know that Keelan has something to add, and I would like Antigone to add in her sort of interkingdom anthropology thing that she shared in the comments privately, because I think it's super interesting. But after Keelan and Antigone go, I would like, if His Grace is willing, if you could talk about preparing to fight crown. So
Can I interject one thing?
Go ahead.
What Syele said is amazing. And I think that as a crown, you recognize that the very worst way to stamp something out is tell people they can't do it.
It's kind of how it went
very true.
So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we sometimes joke that like the SCA is run on spite. Like, the best way to get something done is, you know, if you're doing it to spite somebody telling you not to do it, or that you can't do it. So regarding students, I don't know that I would be comfortable taking a student that was specifically like to teach them how to reign. Like I feel like that's a little, I don't know when they're going to win, if they're going to win. I like it's a little hard. If you have anywhere near anything above a neutral relationship, or even a neutral or above relationship with your heirs, you know, in the East, we try to take that on. You know, we followed Evelina and Kenrick, and they the first time, and they were like, okay, so here's what you do, and we did a lot of things together, and we learned through them by doing it together. And so when we were followed by people who hadn't reigned before, we tried to do the same for them. You know, this is how you pass it on. But in terms of students, you know, Duchess Kenna was the first one I knew of to do this. She took Rose Donataries, and I said, what is this about? And she said, and so I do it now too, but she said, the great thing about this is that it's not something that you have to give up when they become a peer, or for any reason other than you don't want to do it anymore, because it is not necessarily a student thing. It's what do we need from this relationship? And it's a period style practice where, you know, I am the Rose patron, and they are my donataries. And so it started out with, I had Razia was my first one, and she said, I'm doing this art stuff, and I don't really feel like I want a laurel just yet. I don't really know what I'm doing, but like you know, people don't really know me. And I was like, so hey, why don't we do this thing? And she thought about it, and she said, and then she came back and she said, I love it because I love the idea that I can do art and dedicate it to you as my donatary. I'm like, awesome. And from there, you know, I gained a few more, but you know, she has since become a laurel, and she did eventually become an apprentice. And my second one was Thomas of Effingham, he is now my don, and I am his cadet. But you know, he since became a provost and then a master of defense. And so, you know, I have a few others now as well, but my role for them is a little bit less, I'm going to teach you how to do this thing in the SCA that is a specific road to peerage. It's, I'm going to use my title and my status to advocate for you as best I can, to find the people who can give you the resources that you need. I have a fighting donatary, and he is now a squire, but I was able to introduce him to a lot of people outside of the kingdom, to fight him, to teach him things that were interkingdom anthropology, and that's where I think that we as royal peers can educate, can take students. Because it's not just about like, I'm going to teach you how to do this thing that I do. I think in any case, a large part of being a peer in a peer student relationship is the learning about the SCA, learning about the kingdom, and advocacy. I think it's a lot about advocacy and being a barrier when needed. So that is something that we do here. And as far as what Syele said about, you know, you don't have the right to take a student because you're not a peer. You know what? People who aren't students can take peers. I don't even care. Like, because there are orders who might not have recognized your work, and that doesn't mean that your work and what you have to give isn't valuable. You know, you can be an incredible fighter and and not have been recognized as a member of the chivalry yet, and you still have things that you can teach somebody. And maybe when there's nothing more that you can teach them, then they become a squire to someone. But anyone can be a teacher. Anyone can take a student. You know, it's ludicrous to say you're not a peer, so you can't, in my opinion.
Great. I really love that. I have to admit, I had to wrap my brain around what you were saying. I thought you said donuts at first, and I'm like, I don't understand what that title is. But
I mean, I would love to have donuts, but
like,
Do we all get donuts?
Yeah. Can I get
but
people to bring me
what
donuts?
I was going to add to that is, do you think that instead of like saying I'm going to teach them how to reign, that royal peers could more take students as a way of networking, where the members or the companions of the Loris estate or the Rose would have students, and when somebody won crown, they could be like, oh, you know, my student's really interested in X, Y, and Z, and offer them for retinue or like whatever. I think that might be a really
Absolutely.
good way to use it as networking.
absolutely.
All right,
And
Antigone.
that's part of what I do too.
Hey, yeah. So in our kingdom, you don't get a patent. You're not a peer. Royal peer isn't really a thing. You're a royal member of the royal family, but you're not a royal peer. And so we don't really have that sort of idea of you're a peer and should act like a peer, although we do. It's very informal. Our actual only duties is to advise the crown. That's it. Hora. That's all we get. That's it. And so I feel like yes, it's the royal family's job to really patronize and do what she's talking about. I love that idea. I think in our kingdom, we kind of have that a little bit more now, but it's very informal. And typically it's done through your household or your knight squire relationship, the knight or the lady of your household teaches you what they did, so forth. The unfortunate side effect of that is that you end up with kind of an echo chamber and only a very narrow viewpoint of how things kind of worked or did work at that time. And so while I am happy to give my information and my knowledge that I have to anyone, I always encourage them, hey, you need to go talk to these other people who have done it recently, or you need to go talk to these other people who have done it from a different location or have a different mindset even. I think getting that whole picture is a really good thing for your diversity and for your knowledge base. The patronage idea I think is amazing. I wish we had something a little bit more formal, kind of like that in our kingdom. I think it would really help with education. But yeah, we don't have any of that structure here. And our Ladies of the Rose, we do a tea and a couple other things, but that sort of education isn't passed on during those.
Interesting. Okay, Your Grace Dog, would you talk about preparing to fight crown?
I certainly can. I wonder what your audience expects of that subject. I'm not sure who all is tuning into this, but like I said, anytime I've put it out there, said, hey, you need to learn this, it's all been consorts who have shown up, not the guys who are actually going to go out there and compete for it. But
we have quite a bit of fighters tuning in. So
okay, well, first thing is, it's still a tournament. And in some ways it's just a tournament. You've got to go, you've got to do all the things you've got to do at any other tournament, but you have to do them the right way every time. I've got a whole little, I sent you, I put a link earlier on about this little treatise I put out years ago about preparing to fight in crown. The mental preparation for fighting in crown to me is only slightly different from fighting in any other tournament. What I don't practice harder for crowns. And I think if you're practicing differently before crown, you're going to fight differently in crown, and that's not always good. If you're on track and you're ready to fight and win a crown, you're ready to fight and win a crown. You shouldn't need to do anything particularly special to enter that tournament. Or, besides the mental preparation, is that if I win this, I don't just go home and go on with my life. Now you've got a job. That mental preparation is necessary. What the only thing that I really do in preparations for crown is I work on my calibration very, very strictly at practice. Is that because in general, we fight within this range of calibration, like this is good and this is this is okay. And, I want to have a very hard line in my mind between this is good and this is not. So I work on narrowing that, and I get a lot of feedback from my practice partners on what they think and how they felt about that and how it looked to them. And from the people watching, I want to be absolutely sure when I take a shot, it's a good shot. And when I don't take a shot, I want to be at least as confident that that wasn't a good shot. I think going into crown, you should be prepared to take. Now, other kingdoms have different methodologies for marshaling. Middle Kingdom has what we call active marshaling, but it's not what other people think active marshaling is. Active marshaling is that the marshals are not there to call blows. Marshals are there to give information and are there to observe and, well, as well as the regular sort of safety concerns. But if I have a question about a blow that landed on me or landed on my opponent, I can stop and ask the marshal, what happened? What just happened there? I'm not clear. First, I ask my opponent, and if my opponent's feedback doesn't jive with what I think happened, I can say, hey, marshal, is that what happened? From either side. And the marshal can give us an object, and our marshals for crown are usually royal peers and are sort of have specifically trained over years to give objective observations of what they saw happen. They don't talk about how hard it was. They talk about whether it was clean and unimpeded. So you need to be prepared to do that when you enter crown. Both to ask the question in the right way without an accusation, and be willing to accept the feedback from the other people on the list that are there to help you. Because this is important. How you win will determine how easily you reign. If the population watching doesn't think you really earned that, you're going to have a much harder time getting done the things you think you might want to get done. So win it the right way. That's your first step. Now, practical things, I say, now the Middle Realm has unique traditions surrounding crown tournament. We were for the first 20 years of my activity, we were an invitation only crown. Unique in the society at the time that you had to be specifically invited by the crown to fight in the tournament. You couldn't just show up and show your card and get in. You had to have a recommendation from a peer. There was a lot to it, and that has relaxed and has changed and morphed. I think we're getting back to it. And what that did, I think, in the mid realm is it made fighting in crown a privilege, not a right. Therefore, winning crown was a responsibility, not an award. So the people who took the job were there to take the job seriously in general. And that, I think, has bolstered the respect that the crown has gotten over the years and continues to. But practically, things like make sure you have all of your little documents that you need in your kingdom. I recommend physically touching them the night before and packing them in your bag the night before you leave. All those other things. Make sure your lucky t-shirt is packed and whatever. When you get to the tournament, this is all preparation, but it's all sort of immediate on the day sort of preparation. That when you get there, your job is to eliminate any distractions you have from fighting in the tournament. That's the best thing for you to do as a fighter. You know, get there early, get your stuff on, make sure it's all working. You know, if you have somebody there to help you, check it, make sure it looks right, acts right, is functioning the way it should. Making sure that your consort is set up and can relax and is prepared, you know, has water, has, you know, whatever they need. Having somebody to help with that is also a good thing, a squire or another member of the household, whatever. But just eliminating any distractions from the fight. If you're late and you're rushing and you're trying to put your stuff on quick, that's a distraction. If your armor doesn't fit right, if you forgot your elbow pad or whatever, that's a distraction. Make sure that you have no distractions, so that when you're fighting, you're just fighting. So, you know, and going back to sort of pre-prep, having am I going to have room to take the bare minimum stuff that I'm going to have to take back with me in my car? You know, if it's just, you know, the paperwork box and both thrones, if that's all I can fit in my car, that's the bare minimum. Okay, I can fit that. Or I've already talked to my squire brother or whatever, or my squire or whatever, and they've got room in their vehicle and they can take it if they want. I was interested in the comment that you made about the lady wearing a nice dress and she took flack for that before a crown tournament. That's appalling to me. Where I come from, you put on your best stuff, and if that means new stuff, that's what you put on. You know, it's respect for the tournament and the crown in general that you do that. That's another sort of bit of practical when you are practicing before crown. One of the things is that if you have got this beautiful new angel wing surcoat or long, you know, ankle length surcoat or something really cool and new that your partner's made for you to wear specifically for crown, and you're saving it because you don't want there to be duct tape marks on it or tears or whatever, you want it to be pristine for crown, make a mock-up of it. If it's different than the stuff you've always worn, make a mock-up of it and practice in it. Wear what you wear, fight with what you fight with. Don't change things in the tournament that you're not used to. I don't know, is that the kind of thing you wanted me to talk on?
Yeah, that's great. And I think after this is over, I'll put the link to your video series in the comments, because you have some really great information out there.
Well, it's not a video series. It's just a document.
It's not a video? I thought it was a video.
I've got videos on that site, but that thing preparing is just a document.
Okay. Dalla, you ready?
First off, sorry if any of my noise was cutting you off, your guys' day. I apologize.
Not at all.
So I made notes because things that you were saying, kind of like, oh yeah. I don't know while you were talking to you, if I'm on your screen and you see me going nuts. Yes, that. Because there's so many things that I agree with, and that my husband and I, who's Duke Saverick, kind of, we incorporate those ideas into our preparation. So the first thing is he has a class as well, something along the lines of 100 things to make you 5% better, but I think it's like 150 or 200 at this point that can make you 5% better. And the way I look at the class, and he might not agree with me, but the way I look at it is it's those modern elements that you would apply to a sport. Doesn't matter what sport, but they're the things that you can do to make you better at said sport. So it's things like hydration. It's applying your full mental capacity to actually achieving your goal. Tying that back into what a consort can do, because his class is focusing on the fighter and what the fighter can do to achieve victory on that day. Well, myself as the consort, I've seen the list and I'm like, okay, well, I can help you with this and I can help you with this. Oh, you don't want me to help you with that? Cool. Which is also valid as well, because we don't I don't think we should jump in and smother our fighter and be like, oh, I'm going to take charge. No, I think I see my job as helping to reduce anxiety on the day. So if that means helping in the months prior in any way possible, discussing fighting, helping you get certain fighter bits, then I can help with that. Or if you just want me to back off, I can do that too. So I think it goes to one of my core consort values, if you will, is that you need to discuss with your fighter what they need from you. And maybe you want to bring ideas to your fighter because maybe that's not their forte. But I think the point is that you need to know your fighter and talk to your fighter frequently on what they need. So just a small example, Saverick, the night before a tournament, if it's an outdoor tournament, will walk the field. So when he gets there in the morning, he knows exactly what ground he's going to be fighting on. And that just is 0.01% that will make him just that much better the next day that maybe someone else didn't do. But it's those little things that we've discovered, or he's really talked about, that put you over to the next level. Those little itty bitty things, all those little pieces of sand. And I had going back, rewinding a little bit, I had a thought. Very few people, I think, when it comes to talking in court, are actually ready. There's very few people that are like, yeah, I can totally stand in front of 100 people and command an audience. But you know what? You get ready real fast. You just jump right on in and it happens. And it's scary, but you get used to it, or you start living with the fear. But there's very few, you can prep, you can go to classes, you can do, but just jump right on in, just do it.
Great, thank you. Syele?
Yeah, I absolutely loved that, Dalla. That was amazing, Your Grace. Like, it just, I love all of the little tiny things. Like, I totally am excited about the like 150 things that you could do, to be a little bit better, right? The one thing I want to point out though is like not every single fighter consort relationship works that way. So I think that the most important thing that you can do, whoever you are, whether you're the fighter, whether you're the consort, is figure out what works for you as a pair. For example, Rorik does not want me poking my nose in whatever he's doing to better his fighting right now. Right. It is not, I mean, I don't want to say it's not my business, right? Like, but he has he has very specific goals in his mind. Like, what I want to do on the day is be like, hey, do you have all your crap? Okay, cool. Like, when do you want a sandwich? Right? If you want one, even, right? Like, here's where your water is. Here's my schedule for the day. Likely it'll be after this round when I'm watching you, but I am not like, we just don't work in that way, right? And that does not mean that people who work in a different way are wrong. It is entirely up to every pair, whoever they are, to figure out what works best for them. And I just like, it's all about communication. I mean, going back, Dal, I think it was you, like you were like, our rain theme was communication. Everything should be about communication. So yeah, I want to be as supportive for him as I can, right? But I need to ask, what does that look like for you? So don't make assumptions, go ask. That's the only thing, and there is no right or wrong way of doing it. It's all an individual discussion between each fighting pair as to what's going to work for them.
Thank you. Keelan?
First of all, that is spot on to my experience as well. Like, everyone has something different they need to do and how they need to be at a crown tournament. And part of that, and actually, it's funny because I saw that there was a question in chat after I had said I could talk about this. Part of that is if you've got kids, the first crown tournament we won, my son was not yet a year. He was a week away from turning a year old, and so I remember that the finals were between Brennan and Conrad, and Conrad's consort looked at me and she said, and like the minute the final blow happened, she goes, "Can I be the head of your nursery?" And I was like, "We have a nursery, okay." Shock. But joking aside, the most important thing that you can do when you have children, if you are going to reign, is in talking about assembling your staff. I was kind of laughing because out of really just superstition, we never really ask anyone before we fight in Crown, with the one exception of who will head the nursery, who will be in charge of our of who is in charge of our kids. Because anyone who knows my son is a bit of a challenge, and so it needs to be someone who can handle finding the right people who can help with him, or can take that on if there's if those people aren't available. So that is an important staffing piece when you have children. The other thing is, when the children are a little bit older, involve them, even when they're young. Actually involve them as best you can in what you're doing at the level that they want to be involved. My daughter used to take she takes shifts retaining whenever we've been royal, and this is like first time we arranged, she was 5 and now she's 13. So she would just come along with the retinue. My son would sometimes wear a guard baldric and walk around behind me as a guard. And so making them a part of what you're doing. We had a little stool that our chamberlain made, that Brian would sit on when we were in court, and he'd sometimes sit there and he'd sometimes run away, and he'd sometimes sit there, and everyone just kind of knew he was going to do what he was going to do, and as long as he wasn't interrupting anything, that was what was going to happen. So you can do this and still meet the needs of your children, but you need to be able to plan for it. You need to be comfortable leaving your children with people, and those people, you have to be comfortable with those people. But it also really helps when you involve them in court, to make sure that, because that involves the other children as well, right? So they see other kids up there, and the other kids get excited, and then the royal children are playing with the everybody else. It really makes the whole family aspect of the SCA just a little bit more family for yours. So really that's, not everybody can do it, not everybody's comfortable doing that, but that's what it really took for us on the day of Crown tournament. I usually feel like if we win, I'm going to be relying on a lot of people, so I'm the one with the kids, until until the finals, or semifinals, because that's what I'm doing right now. And that might mean I'm at the side of the list, it might mean I'm not, it might mean I'm on the other side of the whole event, but this is the way we SCA. And to other points that were made, it's okay that it's different for everybody. You have to do what works for you, or you can't do what's best for your kingdom.
Thank you. I think that's so important. Including the kids is such a great advice. Inga?
So I think in a way, this whole discussion about, how do we prep, how do we have our consort, a consort or fighter be ready for this tournament, goes back to the whole topic of tonight, which is it's okay to say you want it. And I think you can't have those open discussions with each other or with any of the people that might be part of your support if you feel as though you can't talk about aspiring to this. And so, I know for my preparation with my current partner, and I've ruled previously with my previous partner, in both cases, it was about what do you need in this moment, and recognizing that it could change. I'm also a fighter, and I've entered Crown as well. There have been some crowns where both myself and my husband fought. There's been some crowns where only he would fight. But what we always discussed well before that time, and not like the night before, but in the months leading up to it, is okay, if we're entering with intent, then let's have a discussion about what that means and what do you need this time. And my big theory behind this goes back to actually teach business communication, is about controlling the variables that you can control. And so it kind of fits with what Dag said, which is there's so many things when it comes to Crown that you can't control. Maybe that day the weather is bad. Maybe that day you don't feel well. Maybe it's like when my last crown, when my husband and I woke up and the entire encampment was infested with tent caterpillars, and everybody calls it now the catacrown, and it was a horrifying crown because we had to shake out his helmet every single fight to get caterpillars out of it, right? So there's so many variables you can't control. But if you control all the variables that you can, then you have the energy to deal with the stuff that you can't. And so we always have those discussions before, okay, this crown, what do you need? What's different? How can I support you? And we have that clarity well in advance. So it's not a last minute thing, so that both of us have the tools we need. And for example, like the decision about if both of us are in the list or not, we discuss that well in advance so that we're also prepared to manage that aspect, because we're both used to having the other support each other by the air. That doesn't always happen if you're both entering. And so, sometimes you don't have that luxury. So we have that mental preparation. So again, we've taken all the things that we can control off the plate. And now we only have to deal with the things we can't. And I absolutely want to reinforce that message of what works for one pairing doesn't work for another, and that it can even change within that scope. Our son, my stepson, my husband's son, is now in his 20s, so he's not factored in as much into what happens at an event. But when he was quite a bit younger, it was a much different discussion, and making him part of the processional, and how was he part of that, and his role with our reign. And so, I think recognizing that it's good to have these discussions, it's important to be transparent about your aspirations, because it also allows you, I think, to be a better consort and fighter, or pairing, whatever that pairing looks like. And I think that makes a huge difference. And I do really love that I think we're seeing a greater inclination within the SCA to include children in these things. I know in Avcal, we have a children's court that actually is the start of regular court, so the children have their moment, and then if they have to go to bed, it's okay, right? The idea of let's make the children part of that whole preparation, but also that extends to how do we make children part of our SCA game as a whole, because that's important, and that's increasingly part of how people can, or if that doesn't happen, how they can't play. And I think that's a really important consideration. The one other thing I want to mention, and I mentioned this right at the start about the idea of not having too big of an agenda. I do want to say I absolutely agree with having a theme. I just have seen people who have such a large agenda that it either means they don't actually do the role that they have to do, or that they're disappointed in that. And I think that was the point I was trying to make, is absolutely have a theme. We've always had themes as well, which is things that we think are important to try and focus on. Just don't lose sight of the actual commitment you're making, which does sometimes absolutely preclude what you're going to want to do. It just may not even be possible based on what else is going on in the kingdom. So just something to think about.
Thank you. That's great. So I was too ambitious with our outline. So we're at 90 minutes, and what I would like to do is maybe have some of you guys back, and we can talk about like actually reigning, and some of the expectations and the responsibilities and costs of time and money and all that. But what I would like to end on is each one of you giving like the one thing you would really want to tell somebody who wants to reign. So if maybe we start with Dog, and then sort of go around.
Oh,
okay?
yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, or we don't have to start with you.
I'm not sure I can come up with one single thing, but if there was, it would be a restatement of what we kind of talked about at the very beginning, is that it's a job. It is a job, but it's a great job. And the benefits far outweigh the burdens. I mean, reserved parking, come on. That's the best thing about being crowned. But yeah, just have an idea what you're getting into, and then that there's an amalgamation of skills that will help you do things better. And if you don't have them, acquire them or hire them on. So not taking up too much time.
Okay, let's see how this works. One thing, be prepared. Be open to being prepared. Go to as many resources as you can to be prepared. And that means reading everything you can get your hands on, both for the international organization and your local kingdom. Understand the customs. It is not ideal. It happens, but it's not ideal that your first court is when you are made crown prince or princess. That is not the ideal. You should have at least an inkling of what is going to happen in front of you, and that all of these people in front of you are going to be looking at you. And but the one thing that I do tell everybody, have that nice piece of garb. Have it in the bottom of a trunk, have it hanging in your pavilion, have it out there, whether you wear it or not. Be dressed up if you can. And gee, if you don't win, you have a nice thing to wear to court. There will be court. There will be a time for this to be worn. Now's a good time, because consider it your armor. This is to the consorts. Consider it your armor, in that you are also prepared to represent your fighter in this one particular arena as well as you can. And however that system works for you, that's what's perfect. Anything that works for you and gets the work done, and maybe you're sane at the end. I'm not saying you're sane at the beginning, but that's sane at the end. Then perhaps the job was done right. Thank you. And
Yeah, so sorry. The first thing I really tell anybody, and the main thing, is that to just educate yourself. There's a lot of tools out there, documents, people you could speak with privately to talk to, though. Just do that. I mean, if you will just do that, you're a step ahead of the game. And do it with humility. There's a right way and kind of a wrong way to go about it. And if you do it with humility, you're going to find people are very willing to help you and want you to be as prepared and as educated as possible about what that job is. So if anything, it's, know what the job is and know what you need to do before you go into it, if you can.
So I'm sure other people are going to say some of the things that, and have said some of the things that I would say. So I'm going to be a little bit of a negative Nelly here and tell you some what I tell people currently in the East is you be prepared to have your heart broken. It's a great job. It comes with a lot of rewards, and I mean it is very rewarding. I don't mean like you get a lot of stuff, but it is a very rewarding job. But it can break your heart. People can break your heart. And I'm not going to say I have a thick skin. I don't have a thick skin. I spent a lot of time crying. You become a public figure. You are now a political figure, and people who you thought were your friends will treat you as such, and you'll wonder why they're doing it, or at least I did. People feel entitled to vent their spleen about things that you're doing, rather than coming and telling you we don't like what you're doing. And so that was very especially now in this digital age, that was heartbreaking to me, and made me question my other motives. But on the more positive side of that, I've in doing a lot of soul searching about it and a lot of looking at it from different angles, the truth is it's 10 people. If you really think about it, and it's not always the same people, but there are 10 people on any given issue that are going to be loudly objecting to what it is that you're doing, saying, wearing, changes you're making, whatever. There are going to be 10 people who are very loudly against it. And it's only 10. The people who are happy, the people who are content are going to be quiet. Remember them, enjoy your time at the events, and everything else, rely on the people who you can trust, who you know will love you at the end of this, even when you inevitably stumble and fall. And is it worth are the rewards worth it? I would say that the job that you bring to the kingdom, the job that you do for the kingdom, what you bring to it, if you love them, they will love you back. Except for those 10 people on any given issue.
Dalla, you ready?
Yes. The one thing is ask for help. Like if you don't know, if you just need to check in, just ask. Just ask your friends, ask other previous royals. Everyone's going to give you their opinion, but ask for help. I don't know how to do this. Where do I need to go? Whatever it is, just ask. And and just jump in. Just do it. Like whatever happens, just go out, meet the people, shake hands, kiss some babies, just jump in, and it'll be awesome. And it'll be over quicker than you know it. So if you're apprehensive, if you don't know what to do, it's going to be over in the blink of an eye. So try to enjoy it. It's super fun. There's nothing like it. And if you're watching this, the next royal in any kingdom, have fun. Good luck.
I think that's me now. Okay. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think the best piece of advice I was given when I was ruling the very first time is to remember that it's the ultimate role of service in our society. And you are taking on the kind of service that is, such a small group of people actually have the opportunity to experience, and it changes the way you see the SCA in both splendid and in very hard ways as well. But it is the ultimate service role. And so if you go in with it being about you, it will be not a happy thing. If you go in understanding that it's about them and it's about the kingdom and it's about making the SCA better in some small or great, but in some way, then you will find moments of joy. It will still have moments where it breaks your heart. I've cried too, more time, although I'm a notorious weeper, but I've cried for sad reasons as well. But if you go in with it with that expectation that it is that ultimate act of service and that ultimate dedication to your kingdom and to this SCA that we all love, that you will find something of joy to it for you that will make it absolutely worth the work that it will be. And I can promise you that. It is all about how you approach it, and that is where the strength lies.
Absolutely agree with that. I'm gonna break the rules real quick. First of all, if you have that amazing dress, freaking wear it. It does not have to be a crown. Do not leave that dress in a box. Do not hang it in the closet. Nobody puts baby in the corner. I'm gonna go there. Wear the dress, okay? Or the pants or the tunic, whatever it is, wear that thing. It does not have to be for crown. It can be just because it's Saturday. Celebrate yourself whenever you get the opportunity. So the thing I would say is be prepared, and this is going to look differently for everyone, to forgive yourself when you fail, because you're going to fail something or someone. Sometimes a lot of people, maybe just a few, maybe someone who really matters to you. You're going to make a decision that somebody doesn't like, right? You're going to have a day where it's just not the best day for you, and you're going to tell yourself like, my God, I just ruined everything for everyone. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't the best day, but it's going to be okay, right? So have a structure in place. Maybe it's a friend who's not even on your court, they're just kind of your buddy system, right? You're going to fail. You're going to fail yourself. You're going to get this thing and you're going to be so excited and you're going to know you're just going to do the best job for everyone and everyone's going to be happy. And somehow you're going to feel a little bit broken at the end of the day. So you need to basically be prepared to forgive yourself for that, and kind of have a little safe house where you can go to talk that through and get those emotions out, and come back brighter and shinier the next day, because that's the most important part. We all fail, we all fall down, and just because you're royalty doesn't mean that you're not allowed to do that. So build for yourself the support structures that you need, and that includes within your own mind and heart. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, all of you. I just want to add, like, one of the purposes of having all of these distinguished guests on was sort of demystify the process and tell you that it's okay to want to do the thing and to prepare. And I just kind of want to emphasize what Syele said. I mean, live your best life. You know, very few people are ever going to reign. Make the dress you want to make. Wear the armor you want to wear. Don't wait for something to happen. Just be your best self, and then the whole SCA is going to be advantaged and benefit from everybody living their best SCA life. So don't wait to win. Just do it. Anyway, that's what I think. So I haven't.
Can I tag a little thing onto
go ahead.
Syele's about forgiving yourself? Remember that you are not single-handedly going to destroy your kingdom. You're not. Just you can't. Yeah, as much as you might like to, you can't. So give yourself a break. Try it. You know, she's right. She's absolutely right.
So thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate how honest you all were. And hopefully maybe I can have some of you back on and we can talk about actually reigning, because we didn't get there, but I think we really covered the part that a lot of people were really interested in, and I just really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Next Sunday, I am teaching how to make an SCA cool Roman hoodie. So you should come out and learn how to do that, because they're super fun, and it's just, you know, sunwear without a hat. It's awesome. So anyway, thank you again to all of my royalty guests today. I just super appreciate it, and thank you everyone for watching. See you later. Bye.
Thank you.